Today on this James the Bike Guy, we're taking a look at the 2020 Trek Roscoe 8. The Roscoe 8 is the top of the line model in Trek's Roscoe lineup, and we're going to take a look at all of the features and the design for 2020, as well as find out exactly what it weighs. But before we get started, make sure you click that subscribe button. That way you can see more bike check videos like this into the future. So the 2020 Trek Roscoe is the third year of this Trek model. So the Roscoe is a 27.5 plus mountain bike, and basically it takes the idea of having a mid-level mountain bike in a 27.5 and tries to get a lot of value and a lot of performance out of the parts that come stock on it. Now, when Trek's Roscoe first came out, it was one of the earlier bikes into the mix, and now 2 years down the line, almost every brand is making a bike like this. So Trek has done a lot to the 2020 version of this bike to make sure that it's competitive and it has nice features. Now, the first thing we got to talk about is actually going to be their Trek Roscoe frame. So this Roscoe frame is actually shared with the Excalibur lineup from Trek as well. And this is going to offer what they call Trek's Alpha Gold aluminum. So that's the highest level of Trek's Alpha aluminum series. It means that it's going to be an internally cable routed frame. It's got very nice looking welds and gussets to it. It's going to have an 1.5 inch tapered integrated headset, and then of course a threaded bottom bracket and Boost 141 QR in the rear. What Boost 141 QR is it's actually the quick release version of Boost. So that means you can actually run any hub set that's Boost that you can also get a quick release adapter for. Say something like a Hope Hub or a DT Swiss. All of those you could upgrade this bike to. Now, the bike is going to use a 120 millimeter travel fork in the front end, and that's going to be for sizes small through extra large. The extra small frame size is actually going to use a 100 millimeter travel fork up front. And the fork is actually one place where this bike definitely differs from last year. We'll get into the spec, but more importantly, this fork went from a 51 millimeter offset to a 44 millimeter offset. And that does wonders for geometry, because one of the things that the previous generations of the Trek Roscoe had was a little bit steep head tube for the type of riding that this is designed for. And they've slackened it out about a whole degree by going to that 44 millimeter offset fork. So that means that we now have a 67.3 degree head tube angle, which is great for this style of bike. The seat tube angle is 69.6, and then the chainstay length is a stable but still plateful 438 millimeters in length. Now, getting into some of the spec on this bike, we'll start with that fork. So that fork is RockShox's brand new RockShox 35. So this is a budget version of the 35 millimeter chassis that you get with a modern Revelation or Pike fork. And that means you're getting these really large size stanchions, which are going to make it extremely stiff. This is of course Boost 110 with a 15 millimeter through axle and just a very good looking fork. Now, to help save costs, they do run a motion control damper, which is an older damper, but of course it does work well. You've got a full lockout and progressive adjustment. You're also going to run a solo air spring, and in this gold level fork you've got of course a tapered steer tube 1.1 to 1.5 inches, and then of course it's going to have adjustable rebound as well. Now, for the drivetrain, Trek is going to use a 1x12 drivetrain, and it's still going to be NX level. I've seen a few bike brands out there go down to the SX version now that you can get that in 12 speed, but here you still have the 12 speed NX Eagle. So this is going to have an 11 to 50 tooth rear cassette. You've got that Eagle derailleur, and then of course a 1x up front, which is going to be running a 30 tooth direct mount alloy chainring. Now, it's got a descendant crankset on here, and you can see this is a threaded bottom bracket into the frame, and you'll notice it's actually got a integrated front derailleur mount. You couldn't run a front derailleur on this bike, but because it's shared with the Excalibur, it does have that mount, but what's really nice is that gives a great spot to mount a chain guide to this bike. Now, in the back of the bike, we should mention that it's also going to have rack mounts. So you've got rack mounts on the bike, and then you actually do have a kickstand mount should you want that. It's mounted to the back, and that's a feature that a lot of bikes like this don't have. Now for tires, you're running the Bontrager XR3 Team Issue 27.5 by 3.0 tires. This is a new tire from Bontrager. They didn't have a plus size tire in 2017, 2018. Either came with a Schwalbe or a Maxxis tire. And I think it's nice to see that Bontrager is making their own tire because it shows Trek's commitment to this plus size lineup. Now these tires are tubeless and they're mounted up on Bontrager's Line 40 40mm wide rims. These are also tubeless, and they're going to be laced up 28-hole Bontrager hubs with 2.0 spokes. And that's going to be the same on the rear. Of course, you're running a standard Shimano HG free hub body and a 6-bolt mounting point for the disc brakes. Now this bike is going to run a 180 disc in the front and the rear, but it's running through with a Shimano MT501 lever and MT500 caliper. So this is actually a pretty high quality hydraulic disc brake setup. It's mineral oil, and the levers feel great because they almost feel exactly the same as, say, what you would get with an SLX lever setup. Now the shifter on the bike, of course, is going to be a SRAM NX shifter. That means you're going to have one click up and one click down, and then it's going to be running through on a 31.8 alloy handlebar and alloy stem. This is the Rhythm Comp stem, and then for a seat post, a TransX JDYSP 18 seat post. It's internally routed. It's got a 1X style lever on the left hand side of the bar, and it's got a Arvada Bontrager saddle with steel rails mounted onto the top. Overall, this is quite a good spec. You know, this bike has grown a little bit in price over the last couple of years, but to that same degree, it's grown quite a bit as far as the quality of components that comes with the bike. This bike is something that you could buy off the shelf and immediately feel like you have a huge upgrade over a previous bike, have tons of control, and it actually allows for tons of upgradability into the future too. So things like a nicer crankset, upgrading the wheels, cockpits, all that kind of stuff is going to be easily done on this bike. So it makes for a great bike if you're looking for something to have for a while. So now that we've taken a look at it, let's go ahead and find out what it weighs. The Trek Roscoe size extra large 2020 weighs in at 31.8 pounds. Well, thanks for watching this video on the 2020 Trek Roscoe 8. This bike is quite nice. I think it looks pretty good. I love the colorway, and I think you're getting a ton of value out of this bike, but I want to know what you think down in the comment section below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Let me know, would you buy this? Would you take it? What would you get instead? And then, of course, leave a thumbs up while you're at it. That way I know you enjoyed the video.